Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to today's session. I am Nelly Yusupova. So excited to be here with you today. Um, for a quick introduction, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a CTO and a startup tech advisor. I work with early stage entrepreneurs to help them uh, thrive as an entrepreneur, learn how to manage their teams effectively, how to be the leader that is necessary to be able to implement the right processes in your startup. So many startups that I work with have no process, and there's so much that we can talk about when it comes to process. If you, That's why I do these sessions so that I can help you understand the importance of process and what are the specific processes that I recommend that you implement in your startups to get things going. So, if you're curious to learn more about the process that I teach and we're going to talk about today, it's based on lean and agile methodologies. And go to techspeakforentrepreneurs.com or techspeak.co for short, or click, if you're in Clubhouse, you can click on the link that's pinned to the top of the room. So very quickly, there are some free webinars that I've created that are on demand that will help you get familiar with some of these processes and the ideas. The first one is how non-techies can launch successful tech startups and the exact process they should be using. I also talk about this whole concept called earn your technical co-founder. So if you're looking for a co-founder, that's the strategy that you should be using instead of the strategy that you probably are using right now that's most likely not successful. So that how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder is another one. It's very, very similar to how non-techies can launch successful tech startups. But I talk about this concept of, if you're outsourcing or offshoring, how to do that effectively. Developer as a service arrangement. It's a concept I made up because I figured out what I think is the right process, the right way to work with outsourced agencies. And if you, again, have any questions about anything that I mentioned today, feel free to raise your hand. I will frame the conversations today, maybe spend another, like the first 10 minutes talking about a concept from something that happened in my week. And then we will get into the questions. And if you are joining us from other channels, so we're streaming this to YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter Spaces, if you are in there and you have a question, just simply type your question into the chat. I'm keeping an eye on the chat, so I will be able to answer those as well. So the third webinar that you should check out is how to cut your product development costs by up to 50%. This is where I will actually calculate the exact numbers that specific steps in your process can help you save. So again, check those out. They're absolutely free. And what we're going to be talking today a lot about is product market fit. And if you are interested in the topic, I know it's something that a lot of startups want to get quickly, and the specific metrics that you should be using. I am doing a live webinar this coming Tuesday from San Francisco. I'm going to a conference. So I'm going to be doing a session from there. It's going to be live, and we'll talk about how to find product market fit, what is product market fit, the specific metrics you should be using, and to know that you're on your way to product market fit, and the specific process that you should be using to be able to get there quickly. So check those out. Again, techspeak.co. I created those resources. They're absolutely free, so that it is your starting point to start to get to know the lean way of building product rather than the traditional way, which is very, very expensive. So I wanted to talk about a very specific question that I got this week from an entrepreneur that I was mentoring. And he is in the MVP stage. So what does that mean? MVP, for those of you who are not familiar with the terminology, it stands for minimal viable product. And it is a small version of a product that you can build so that you can launch it and then, of course, iterate from learning from it and get it into an actual product. Now, the founder asked me, so they're very, very close to launching. And the question that he had was, what now? So now we're weeks away from launching the MVP. We're going to celebrate. And like, what's the next step? And how do I use your 10-step process to go to the next step? And for those of you who are not familiar with the TechSpeak 10-step process, there are 10 steps that I teach in the process that is designed to help increase your product velocity. Okay. Speed is the number one asset that a startup has. And the 10 steps that we'll talk about today that I am so bullish on that everyone should be using will help you iterate really, really quickly. And all of the 10 steps there's a reason why that they're there. The first step is validate. So we don't build anything at all until we really understand the pain point for any new feature and functionality that you want to add into the product. The second thing is to then build a clickable prototype so that you can save money rather than coding the thing, which is, by the way, coding is a way of building a prototype, but it's so expensive. It's so much easier to build, to refine your ideas for possible solutions based on the pain points that you find in prototyping phase. Then you do steps 3 to 9 is all about planning and preparing for development. A lot of people skip this step, and that's where a lot of that scope creep and delays and things that we know and feel are very, very painful and expensive happen because a lot of people don't know how to plan and prepare for development really effectively. Then we have step number 10, which is analytics. So when a lot of founders find themselves, okay, now we launched our MVP, what do we do next? They need to first go to step number 10 and implement, or as you're building your product, you need to make sure that you have analytics already built into your product. And not any type of analytics, right? Because we all are familiar with Google Analytics. That's what helps you kind of track the page views and everything else. What I'm talking about is user behavior data. What this means is you need to understand the specific key performance indicators, also known as KPIs, that you need to keep track of and build those and track those in your application. So essentially, you need to understand what specific features and functionalities your users are using in your product. How are they using it? How often do they use it, etc. And from that, you will be able to track the retention of your product and all these other metrics, which we will talk about in the product market fit session on Tuesday. So if you want to learn more about that, jump on that webinar on Tuesday. So those are the 10 steps. Now back to the question. So now that you have your MVP and you have your metrics, your goal is to now iterate on the product as quickly as possible, right? A lot of people celebrate. They say, well, we'll launch our MVP. Now we're golden. But in my opinion, the real work begins now, because what you think, a lot of founders naively think that product market fit will be a straight line to success. We've done our initial talking to customers, we built a product, and it's going to take us 6 months of a straight line of success to really get there. But in reality, it's a lot of pivots, right? Small changes and testing and iterating and testing your hypotheses. It's a hypothesis-driven approach that is optimized for helping you learn quickly. And if you're able to do that, then you are going through the 10 steps that I mentioned over and over and over again, because every single idea that you get for improving your product in step number 10 is going to be your hypothesis, your assumption that you need to prove right or wrong. And so you go back to step number 1 and validate and go to prototyping, and you're going through these steps over and over and over again. And the faster you can do it with your team, the faster you're learning and, of course, saving time and money. So that's the idea behind this iterative process. And product velocity is a concept that I don't think enough people talk about. And I think it's a competitive advantage for a lot of startups. So a lot of founders are afraid that someone's going to steal their idea. So they oftentimes build in secret. They never share their idea with anybody. But guess what? As soon as your startup launches, if it's a good idea, I can bet you any amount of money that people will start copying it. But what they can't copy is your ability to execute, your product velocity, right? So you're essentially 10 steps ahead of your competition simply because you're able to iterate really quickly. And by the time people are copying, number one, they don't understand what you're doing because they don't have your insight, but they can copy what they see, but they can't copy how quickly you're moving. They can't copy any of the future things and how quickly you're moving. So, product velocity gives you a giant advantage in the marketplace. So that's what I wanted to say. I had a long conversation with the founder, and we put together a plan for him, and that he's now going to be following to be able to get to product market fit really quickly and iterate on this product. Again, don't be hung up on, we just got to launch the MVP, because that's where the thing just starts. As soon as you launch your first version of the product, it will, by the time it's reached product market fit, it could be a completely different product. It could be a completely different idea if you've got to shift and make a big pivot, right, to a different industry, to a different customer segment. So many different things change. So don't be hung up on all the different shiny features and ideas that would make your product perfect. Try to understand what is the core problem that you're solving and do that really, really well and start iterating on that as quickly as possible. So, with that, I am going to start taking questions. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and it could be on anything that I talked about today. It could be on anything related to startups. Just feel free to raise your hand, and I'll bring you up to the stage so that you can ask your questions. So we have Finny raised your hand. I am bringing you up. And we will get started with the next phase of this. Okay. Well, it looks like Lee Luch is here first. So, Lee Luch, welcome to the stage. I don't know if you can hear me. If you can, feel free to unmute and ask your question. We can't hear you. So actually, well, no, sorry, that was my volume. So go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I just had a question. I heard you talking about velocity when starting up your business, but I wanted to know, is it better to learn the technical skill and then release it, or is it better with outsourcing?
Great question. So I'm going to repeat your question, Liluch, and hopefully I'm pronouncing. How do you say your name? I don't want to.
Yeah, Liluch, yeah.
Is it Liluch? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the question Liluch had was, he's a non-technical founder, I'm assuming, and is it better to learn how to code, or should you outsource the first version of your product? It's a question I get all the time. And while learning how to code is never going to hurt you, and if you have the time and the energy to actually do it for yourself, you should absolutely do it. It will never, ever hurt you. It will probably help you become and understand certain concepts. But in reality, we just talked about speed being and time to market so that you don't miss the market opportunity is really, really important for startups. And it's unrealistic for you to be able to be proficient enough in coding, no matter how much time you spend. You know, I went to school for 3 years for 4 years for computer science. And, you know, when I got out, I still didn't have the experience and the knowledge to be able to build something from scratch. And, you know, sometimes people think, oh, I'm just going to go to a boot camp and learn how to code. But you know, learning how to code in a boot camp takes you 6 months to a year. So do you have that time is the first question you need to answer. If you have the time and you're young and you have the time, it'll never hurt you. It's a skill set that I think will only pay dividends over time. But realistically, even if you know how to code and you are the CEO of the company, you most likely are not going to be coding the product. Okay. So I would encourage you to think about that and the pros and cons. And so let's now get to the topic of outsourcing. And if you haven't seen my webinar on how to build your MVP without a technical co-founder, click on the link pinned to this room and watch it. I'll also talk about developer as a service arrangement. This is the only way that I found that development and outsourcing works. So outsourcing, it has a bad rap because a lot of people have had so many projects that went out of control. They lost thousands of dollars. They had to start from scratch. And just like most people, when I created TechSpeak, or before I created TechSpeak, I used to blame developers for these failures. I just couldn't understand how anybody in their right mind could take advantage of these poor entrepreneurs. But the more I started thinking about it, the more I realized that while there are some bad actors, the onus on catching the mistakes, the onus on setting the process is on the entrepreneur. And almost every single horror story that I've heard, and there were thousands, the founder just didn't know how to communicate properly, how to set the right expectations, how to manage the team, because they do need to be managed. And using this developer as a service arrangement, which I recommend, where you use your own process, which is the process, hopefully, that I'm teaching you, learn and iterate and do things really quickly, and working with the developers directly. And yes, you're not technical, but if you have the resources, if you are interested in learning how to do this, it's very, very easy to learn. That's what I do in my paid training, TechSpeak for Entrepreneurs Academy. I teach non-technical founders how to manage developers effectively and how to implement this process, this way of iterating really quickly with, even if you're working with outsourced teams. So to me, it doesn't matter whether your team is right next to you, your in-house team, or it's outsourced. If you manage them properly, if you set their expectations correctly, if you know how to keep track of what they're working on and keep track of the progress, you will be able to, if there are mistakes or issues, you hired wrong or anything else, if they're not performing, you're going to be able to minimize mistakes because you will see those red flags early and often, and be able to change things as necessary, because none of us will never make mistakes. So that's what I would recommend. So to me, it doesn't matter. The only advantage, if you don't have the skill set with going with an outsourced team, is that you can get there a lot quicker. But you do have to learn how to manage them. You do need to have a process that you use with them. Otherwise, it may not work out. Hopefully that answers your question, Lee Luch. I don't know if you have a follow-up.
That answered it. Yeah, that answered it.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah. Also had one more other question, if you didn't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know any outsourcing websites and stuff that you would recommend?
So the reason why I don't recommend any specific company or developer for that matter is because you need to understand what you are building. You need to understand how you're going to build it, and the specific technologies that you will use will determine what is the right agency and or type of developer you should be working with. Some agencies use a set of technologies that you may not want to use. Maybe you decide that you use a lot of no-code tools, right? You need to be able to understand the what and the how you're going to build something to determine, and also what is your budget to be able to determine what is the right agency for you. Because if you have a very small budget, most likely you can't outsource to some of the top agencies in New York City, for example. They charge thousands of dollars per MVP. Maybe you go and figure out how to offshore, which again, using the processes and the concepts that I teach you, you should be able to successfully do, and of course, save a little bit of money. So that's why knowing and understanding what you're building, how you're building it, will determine the team structure that you need and what specific type of team that you need to be able to execute. And also these concepts that I'm talking about, developer as a service arrangement and all of these things, not every agency is going to be open to working that way because they're just not structured that way. But there are a lot of agencies that are cropping up that will work with you that way. It's essentially you're leasing the developers from them, you're managing them to yourself, but they just happen to be somewhere else. But they're only working on your project, and you know exactly what's happening at any point in time. And by the way, when I say you, necessarily mean you. I mean someone on your team, if you have a team, right? So hopefully that helps you answer your question, Liluch. That's the way I would look at that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll just go back down so you can answer other people's questions.
Thank you so much for the question. Again, feel free to check out the free webinars if you want to dive deeper into the process and some of these concepts as well.
Yeah, we'll do. Thanks.
Great. You are welcome. I love the questions because when you guys ask questions, you are helping everyone else who's listening, both on Clubhouse and everywhere else that we're streaming. If you are with us on either YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, feel free to type in your questions into the comments as well. I keep an eye on the comments, and we'll be answering your questions from there. Or just join Clubhouse and join us there, and you'll be able to ask in live. Let's see. So we have, I'm doing a PTR, and we have Ola next in line. And everyone on stage, if you could keep your microphones muted until I call on you, that would be great. That way we're not interfering with each other's audio. So Ola, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Nelly. Good afternoon, Ola here. I just wanted to ask, I am currently in the ideation stage for my startup, and just stuck. So I just wanted to know if you could give a tip on how to move past being stuck up when you've got an idea. You've basically drawn out how the journey should look like, but you're just stuck, really.
Yeah. What an amazing question. So thank you, Ola. I'm going to paraphrase it. So you are in the idea stage and you are stuck. You don't know where to go from there. So Ola, well, what I would recommend, the first thing that you do is go through a proper validation phase. And what that means, and again, I dive deeper into all of these concepts in my webinars. Maybe check out how non-techies can launch a tech startup or how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder. I will give you step-by-step all the things that you should be doing, but I'm going to summarize it here. So there are first two things that are really, really important, especially if you're not technical, that you can do that requires no technical expertise, but will ensure and give you confidence that you have something real, that people will pay you with time or money, and ideally both. And that is validation, because validation will help you refine and iterate on your product idea way before you are ready to build it. It'll make sure that it is a real painkiller. What I find when people have ideas, that those ideas are good ideas, but they're not painkiller ideas. They're level 5 or 6 or 7 problems. When you have a level 5 or 6 or 7 problems, when you invest the time and the money to actually build it and you launch, you're going to have an uphill battle trying to convince people to use your product. When you find a level 12 out of 10 problem, which is what I teach you how to do, using proper validation without leading your user to your solution, that's the key. You cannot lead your user to your solution. When I say validate, what I actually mean, you need to invalidate that your solution needs to exist, and the potential people that you are talking to are saying, no, this is a big problem that I have. So if you do proper validation, you're going to set yourself up for success. It will completely shift how you feel about your idea, okay? Because you now will have specific concrete data that actually shows what is valuable to your customers that they're going to be willing to pay for. The second step, once you understand that, even the solution that you will be using could be different than what you're thinking right now. And this is what when people go into my program, they come in with a specific idea, but after they do a lot of this iteration on validation, they realize that, hey, this is a better way to solve this problem. And that's when prototyping comes in. This is a way to build a clickable prototype of your solution. Again, you don't have to write any code. It's not a no-code solution. It's literally like drawing your solution. Then you take that clickable prototype, which is so realistic that your customers won't even know that it's not real, but you will be able to test out the potential solution. And when you do those two things, you can actually go back to your potential customers and pre-sell them on this idea. I've had someone in my training right now. He is a non-technical founder, built a B2B solution, which means business to business. And he has 5 different customers that he pre-sold, that he got letters of intent for when he builds his product that they're going to be using it. That's huge. He then used that to go and raise some initial angel investment, which is like, great. He doesn't even have a product. He doesn't have a team. He was going to offshore and outsource and all of this stuff. But he did all of this because he did the first 2 steps really, really diligently. When he came into the program, he actually had some version of the prototype, but he went back and redid the validation and refined his prototype based on the problems that he has heard. Because initially he didn't do validation as diligently as what I teach you to do. The most important step, because once you get that right, everything else is going to be easier. The other advantage to doing validation is that you're really understanding who is the exact target customer that you should be targeting and how to acquire them. Because you're going to have to reach out to these people and you're going to try to get them to talk to you. And if it's going to be really, really hard to do it certain ways, you need to even iterate on how you're going to convince them to talk to you. So those are all things that you could be doing right now. Again, require no technical expertise. And the other thing that it will help you do, Ola, is what I call earn your technical co-founder. So a lot of people want a technical person to be on their team, but when they try to get somebody to join their team, they're getting a lot of crickets, simply because you're not valuable with just an idea to somebody. Good technical people get pitched thousands of times a day by entrepreneurs who have an idea. And so they're very skeptical. At the same time, they also have a lot of opportunities to make a lot of money in working for big companies, right? So you are now talking to risk-averse developers who are not necessarily interested in taking a risk on an idea. But every single step that you take towards making your idea have more traction by first doing validation, then prototyping, and maybe the third step, if you need to, invest a little bit of your own money to then build the MVP so that you already know you have your customers, right? So you can then get them onboarded. Every single thing that you're doing towards getting more traction is going to become an advantage for you, because now you can pitch this as an opportunity rather than I need you to come work at my company. This works for investors. It works for partners. It works for literally anyone that you want to bring into your company. You need to make yourself valuable, or your company. Your idea cannot be just an idea. So those are some ideas that I would encourage you to think about or work on. If you don't know how to do any of this stuff, if you need somebody to kind of show you the way, I also have a paid training on teaching you exactly how to do that. So check out the link pinned at the top of this session, and you can get started there as well. Hopefully that helps, Ola. Let me know if you have any follow-ups.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Nelly.
You are welcome. All right, let me do a pull to refresh. We have Aref next. Aref, welcome to the stage. Feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everybody. Actually, I want to describe a situation because we're now deciding to have an additional founder in our team. I want to describe you and then have your perspective on whether it's viable or, let's say, it's okay to go for that or not. We're developing and stuff. We have a startup working on a kind of medical problem, and now we have some doctors in our team as founders, but we want to add a project manager, somebody whose background is mainly involved in managing mega projects in energy sector as COO of team. So because actually he's really talented in managing team and directing the activities, and also he has let's say a moderate knowledge on business analysis. So as an advisor, when you look up at such a team, that's the target is about. Sorry, do you have my voice? Like,
you went, yes, you went away for a second. So just pick up where you were as a manager.
Yeah, Yeah. So to make it short, to paraphrase it, this is it. We have the problem is about something medical. We're trying to solve it via our solution as a startup. Now we in the founder team we have doctors, and also we have CTO who's specialist in coding. But we want to add somebody with the background of project management mostly and business analysis as COO of the team, to have his, let's say, knowledge and talent to manage our activities within the founders, among the founders. So when you look at such an, let's say, arrangement, the first thing comes to your mind. What is it? I want to know it.
Yeah, great question, Iref. So anytime you bring on a senior person into your company, you want to do two things. So let's put skill set aside for a second. The first thing I look at is DNA qualities and how would they fit into the culture of the company. This is so undervalued and underlooked by a lot of founders, because a lot of, like, the number one reason why a lot of startups fail or never get off the ground is because co-founders can't get along. Co-founder relationships don't work out. It's because they can't work together, make decisions effectively, all of that stuff. So those problems you don't want to have. And I think the reason why a lot of founders have those problems is because they don't do the initial alignment on vision, on mission. Are they the type of person that you like to work with? Can you spend lots and lots of time together, right? You're essentially marrying them, especially if they're co-founders. So that's the first thing that I would look at. Is this person, not looking at the skill set yet, is this person potentially the type of person we could spend hours with? This is the person who is aligned on the vision and how we want to grow the company, so that you are eliminating some of those prickly points that could, create dysfunction in your company. So that's the first thing. The second thing is skill set. So in the early days, and the experience as well, I would look at, has this person worked in a startup specifically? Because working in a startup is very, very different than having a lot of experience working at a big company. I have seen so many people fail working in a startup because it's a very different environment. It's everybody does everything, and things are moving and shifting really quickly. And some people just don't know how to work like that. And when you work at a big company and you perform the same function, you have 20 other people helping you do the work. And in a startup, you are doing 100% of the work because you are now the only person. And if you're too senior, then you may not even know how to do the work anymore because you're just a manager. So those are the things that I would look at from a skill set perspective. Obviously, you need to know, why are you bringing this person into the team? What are they going to add? What are some of the problems that you, very specifically, what are some of the specific problems that this person can solve when they come into our company that we're having right now? And really defining that will help them be more successful in their job, because now they understand the specific 2 or 3 things they need to focus on in the first 6 months to a year to help you guys become more efficient, increase product velocity, or sell, or make sure things don't fall through the cracks. I don't know any of those issues, but those are the things that you need to define as the. I'm assuming you're the CEO, and kind of define why is this person going to be so valuable. Because every single person on the early startup team have to be performing at 110%, because there's no padding. Like in a big company, there's so many people who can pad somebody's not performing well or not performing as much as fast as you execute, whatever else, right? So those are all things that I would look at and make sure that this person has, and that they're, of course, a good fit and have the right experience working specifically in a startup. I don't know if that answers your question. If you have a follow-up, feel free to jump in.
Just one more thing to add. First of all, thank you. That was really helpful. So actually, because the person we're going to be evaluating to have on our team, it's let's say an old friend of us. So from the communication point of view, from getting along, so we will have no problem. And also, as COO, we want to define a responsibility. We have this responsibility, and nobody can manage it as much as we believe he can do. His responsibility would be gearing the team up, synchronizing the people, because others are mostly about others, not mostly, all of them are doctors. The CEO, the CFO, they're all doctors. So there is somebody required, I believe, in every startup to synchronize all these people, all these founder team members, to have them work as they should be. So this is the main target we are considering to add in on the team. I don't know if it works, because he has been working mostly on project management, so he knows how to define the responsibilities, how to put people and build the teams to work on a single defined aim target.
Right.
So that's why we're considering it. I don't know if it works. So
and
your perspective.
Absolutely, and it does work. And the reason why I focus on process, so Aref, what you're mentioning here is a lack of process. Process helps everyone get aligned on specific goals, right? And I teach a lean and agile process for teams so that they can do these iterative functions that we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes. That's a process. When you implement a process in your startup, everyone will know exactly what should be done when, how they should be doing it, what's expected of them, and things will flow a lot better. The other thing I'm going to mention is maybe test this person out, because there's a difference between running a project and being the COO. COO, in my mind, is not just running a specific project, right, which could be a product, but it's really running the entire company, which could be many projects. So that's a skill set that this person may not have. They may be just really good at juggling one thing, which is what project managers usually do, but not necessarily the big company. So possibly, if this is going to work out, what I like to do is test people out. So before hiring them full time, maybe do a test run, or before giving them the co-founder title or whatever else, make them earn it. Make them by trial, of course, right? And so that's something that you can consider doing to make sure that this is the right fit. Of course, I'm a huge believer in process. I think a lot of startups have no process, which is why I teach it. And if you're interested, again, in learning the process, feel free to jump on any of the free webinars, because a lot of product managers, this is the other thing that I think is really important. Let's say you buy into this lean way of building products, and you want to either switch or use that as the way your startup works and makes decisions. And this product or product manager or project manager that you're bringing on to be the COO is not familiar with those concepts. Again, misalignment on DNA qualities. You either need to train them to implement this process, or they are just not going to be a good fit, because there are some people who just can't work with uncertainty. That's why understanding, number one, what is your goal? How do you want your startup to iterate, move quickly, all of that stuff, all the things that we talked are really important. And, or are you just looking for a manager? And in that case, why does this person need to be a co-founder? Why can't you just give them some equity and to incentivize them? And why do you specifically mention them to be the co-founder? Those are all things that I would think about, depending on how important this person's role is. And you would be able to see how invaluable they are after you're able to test them and see them in action. So that may actually help you decide, is this a person I should take a bet on, once you actually see some of the early progress that they make.
Nelly, thank you. Thank you so much. It was a lot of help. So I would be down at this stage listening to your valuable advices.
Great. You are welcome. Thank you for the question. Let's see. I did a pull to refresh, and Mauro, you are next. Welcome to the stage.
Hey, Nelly. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
I am a non-technical founder. I've raised lower six digits, and I've put together a team of junior developers, basically. Not juniors, actually. There's one that is two that are actually senior. But we are at prototype stage. Basically, actually, we completed the prototype. We've tested it. We validated. We've ran through both sides. I'm working. It's a B2B solution as well. We validated with existing customers. But now we are at the phase where we will be developing the solution, the MVP, and doing a little bit of research and talking to some people. I was led to believe that a low-code, no-code solution, and specifically considering Flutter, Flutter Dev, to go for. And pretty much spoken to the team, and they are comfortable with the solution, with the choice. But a few days ago, I ran into another highly respected tech person, also here from Clubhouse as well, that kind of broke me down, or kind of led me to, and again, I'm just looking for your advice, okay? Mm-hmm. I need a second opinion, basically, I should say that, because I was led to believe that perhaps instead of Flutter, I could use some faster solution like Airtable. Mm-hmm. And that I could eventually even be doing that myself, saving me some, of course, significant amount of funds, as you can expect. Being a non-technical person, and I've actually played around with Airtable probably about a year or so ago. I'm not going to say it was overwhelming, but it was not the focus at the time. I looked away. And now that I've had these conversations the past couple of days, I'm just rethinking that. But before I actually dive into second guessing my decision on going with Flutter, I wanted to understand or hear someone else in terms of what's the viability? How realistic is it that I can myself dive into it for the next, 12, 14, 16, 24 hours on Airtable and create something that is workable. It's not going to be related to the MVP. Not as direct, to the prototype, but that is actually there could be an MVP solution that could be launched in 3 or 4 days versus something that we develop on Flutter that will take some time. Yes, how realistic is it? I just,
So, Moro, that's a great question. I'm going to paraphrase your question just because you asked it in a long way. I'm going to just paraphrase it. So, Moro has a challenge. He initially wanted to build his product, the clickable prototype that he's validated and created in a cross-platform tool called Flutter. A comparable tool is React Native that was built by Facebook. So Flutter was built by Google. It's basically the same, but you're writing a lot of custom code when you're using these platforms. But it still saves you a lot of time than, of course, going with other, like, let's say, building a native application on iOS and Android. So it does save you money from that perspective. But now we are also faced with some no-code / low-code solutions like Airtable and a zillion other tools that allow you to move a lot quicker and iterate a lot faster. So the way that you can think about this decision is, and I always say to founders, optimize for launching as quickly as possible, because what you think is going to work is not necessarily going to work. And so spending thousands of dollars on the perfect solution is not always worth it, right? Depending on what stage of the idea you're in. So the what and the how you're going to build something is going to completely depend on your ability to, like, do you have this mindset? I'm going to launch something really quickly. I'm going to learn. And I earlier talked about optimizing for learning. That's exactly the process I want you to follow, because what you want to do is launch something, see if it works. If it doesn't work, iterate on that and pick the tools and the technologies that will help you do that really quickly. So the question that you also had is how realistic is it that if you spend the next 48 hours that you'll be able to whip something out and actually make it functional? The answer to that is, depends on how technical you are. It depends on how comfortable you are with that tool and how quickly do you learn. But what I would encourage you to think about as well is engage your team in it. You already have people who can go and learn that really quickly. And Airtable is not the only no-code / low-code solution that you could be using. So you should be evaluating with your team, what is the best way that we could test this idea? What are some of the tools and the technologies that are available to us right now? And maybe it's Airtable, maybe it's something else. I had a student in my program who, prior to coming to TechSpeak, she used 10 different no-code tools to slap together, basically tape together a solution that worked. And she did that for 6 to 8 months before she was outgrowing it. And eventually she basically joined the program because she wanted to learn how to work with a developer, again, non-technical founder. And they didn't take the entire application, scrapped it and started over. They just started taking the pieces that weren't performing, that could be or should be, have a more robust solution, and they were improving on that so that you could scale better. So that's the approach that you could be using, and thinking of what is the combination of the no-code, low-code, custom solutions that we can use to move really quickly. And it's not always black and white. We're only going to be no-code or we're only going to be low-code. It's a combination of ultimately all the different solutions that you can always be making decision on, even if you are an established startup with making tool choices and decisions. You're always trying to pick what's the best way and what's the fastest way that we can test this idea. So this combination of no code, low code, and custom code is what you should be always thinking about. And what are the best tools that are out there on the market? Because these tools change so quickly. I would encourage you to, even before you jump into Airtable, look at other tools and technologies that are out there with your team and make a really informed decision on, is this the right approach? What is our goal with this? What are we going to learn at the end of doing this, right? Very strategic, very methodical. I teach a hypothesis-driven development. And every single thing that you build has to have a hypothesis. And the reason why I love hypotheses, right, if you are familiar with science, is that they have a specific metric that you can use to determine whether that hypothesis is true or false. Is this working out, or do I need to change direction? And being very, very hypothesis driven and metric driven is going to help you really iterate really quickly. Because if something isn't working, or you are coming into, like, let's say you haven't reached your metric that you thought would be how you define success, at that point, it kind of gives you a nudge to revisit that. And are we doing this wrong? Do we need to adjust things? Or is this a completely wrong approach to solving this problem? So that's the framework that I would use to thinking about this, and involve your team in this decision making as well.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback first and foremost. You gave me a good idea as to which way to go. Simplification, basically. That's what I've heard from you as well.
A lot of people, and I think I love that you said simplification, because I think a lot of people, especially non-technical founders, build up this big giant mountain in front of them that is insurmountable when you think of like getting across it. But if you just think, I need to take the first step towards the right direction, and then I know that that will inform the next step and the next step and the next step, that's your goal. So take the first step, figure out, like, just get started. Don't have paralysis by analysis, because the more action you take, the more informed your next step becomes, because you now have data that will help you get moving faster, right? Most people just wait and wait and wait and wait until they find what they think is the perfect solution. And then they invest a lot of time and money and energy going all in on that solution, only to realize when they launch the product that it is a solution that no one cares about, or they thought about it incorrectly. So taking small steps towards the right direction is much better, because you're now not spending a lot of time and money going in the wrong direction. You're constantly adjusting your path.
Okay. Thank you, Nelly. I appreciate that. Now I just got to do the next step, which is I already know what it is. I got to have one final conversation with my lead tech, and I know exactly how to frame it because of the type of work that he was going to supposedly do on if we went with Flutter. So I got it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for the clarification. There's a lot more clarity now. Thanks.
Great. And Maura, one other thing that, and I know this is unsolicited advice, but from working with so many non-technical founders, I already feel a red flag coming from the way that you ask this question. I feel like, and completely disregard this advice if I'm off, but this is me, my gut feeling. So I'm here to serve you and tell you, I feel like you are not managing the team properly. You're not setting the right expectations, because your technical person should be guiding this, right? They're the person that should be saying, this is what we should be using. You should be doing the research. You shouldn't be concerned with this way of, I'm going to jump into Airtable and figure out how to learn it in the next 48 hours. So I could be completely off here, but I feel like you could use the guidance on how to be the leader that you need your team to be, because you need to set the right expectations and processes that your CTO should follow, that your team members should follow, and you should be leading that. You can't it sounds like everybody's just kind of doing things that they think are right, and it just, something doesn't gel with me. So I just wanted to bring that up. You can think about it. You can maybe connect with me if you want to have further conversations, and maybe how I can help you. But I think you as a non-technical founder need to get educated. You need to level up your skill set so that you are confident in this role. It sounds like you're, especially from a technical standpoint, your developer is not stepping up like they should be, or your CTO, who I don't know what the title is that they have.
Nelly, I'll get with you on that. I really am. I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to reach out. Back channel is the best way to channel with you.
So you can, why don't you go to techspeak.co and you can book a 15-minute call with me.
Really, thank you. I will do that. And just so you know, you are not that far off. I'm trying to get anybody on my team, someone on my team, to actually raise to that standard. And right now, I'm actually having to figure all of this out by myself, so I can have a better way to communicate that with them. So, but yes, you kind of got it.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you for your questions, Maura. We will go to Darian next. Darian, welcome to the stage.
How are you, Nelly?
I am doing well, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful. Okay, so I have a few questions, okay, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to give my scenario and like what I'm going through right now, and then ask the question. So currently, okay, so I've validated my service. I created and like I said, I am a non-tech founder, but bought my first laptop August of last year. Taught myself no code and developed a progressive web app on Glide.
Okay.
Was running that on Glide. Started that on February 22nd. Had about 200 and something users. Went to transfer over to make it. I wrapped it in an APK file. Went to put it on the Google Play and Apple stores. Get paid my developer fees. Come to find out, Glide doesn't support going native.
Mm-hmm.
Since Glide doesn't support going native, I am at a crossroads. Either I can completely rebuild the application from the ground up using what I already have, because after revalidation, after people have been able to use the web app and so on and so forth, I kind of have some ways to improve it that I kind of already planned on using in the first place, but I do have some ways to improve it. And so I'm either at a crossroads between rebuilding in another no-code platform and learning that platform, such as Bubble, well, that's the one I would use if I did, or not hiring, because we have no money over here in the startup world, hiring / getting a co-founder that's in tech to be able to create the application with code. So yeah, that's the crossroad I'm at. And then my follow-up question to that is, if I do go the CTO tech person route, as a non-tech person, how do what is the vetting? Like, I mean, like, I'm kind of scared to get duped, which is partially why I'm leaning toward just rebuilding it all on my own, but that will take significantly longer. But that's the scary part for me.
Great. So, Dorian, great question. So I'm going to address the CTO question first because it ties into the first question. So to frame this a little bit for people listening, in case they missed it, so you have built an app in Glide. Very quickly, you realize that they're not providing a key feature for you to allow you to build a native application. So now you are at a crossroads deciding whether you should build the same solution on another no-code platform that will allow you to do that, or should you hire and or find a co-founder to actually help you build in a custom code fashion. Now, the chances of you getting a co-founder at this stage, because I'm assuming you have no traction, you have no customers, is very, you do? Okay, so if you have customers, so if you already have customers and you have shown traction, chances of you attracting someone are going to be higher, right? A lot higher than someone with just an idea. And you've done what I call earn a technical co-founder. You've done some of the steps, proven that your idea is not just an idea and that it is an opportunity that somebody can be a part of. But having said all of this, it's going to be a lot harder for you to find a technical person really quickly, which is what you need, because finding a co-founder is a really big job. You need to not just make sure that they're aligned on skill set, but that they are aligned on values. We already talked about this. I don't know if you were in the room. Be making sure
yes,
that
I was actually following that, which is why I didn't ask that question. I'm actually
right.
one of those people. Yes.
Great. So you need to make sure that there's a connection there, that you have a relationship, that you are basically marrying someone. And if you look at it as finding a co-founder is like finding a life partner, that's what you want to be, thinking or feeling when you find the right person. So don't jump into, oh, I'm just going to find this co-founder so they can build this application for me. That's a wrong approach, and one that can, I think, literally kill your company, right? Because as I mentioned, the number one reason why a lot of startups fail or never get off the ground is due to co-founder relationships not working out. So avoid that at your own cost, right? Take the time, make decisions from a position of power rather than a position of need. From today's point, I want you to go to technical conferences, technical events, anything, anywhere where technical people hang out, so that you can increase your chances of potentially meeting that person. But the chances of you just meeting someone and you click immediately and you just want to jump and marry them, essentially, right, are going to be so slim, because you need to take the time to spend time with them, to work with them, to see them in action, test them out, right, before they become a co-founder. Now, that's the first thing you need to think about. It's going to take time, even if you already have some version of traction. So ideally, for a lot of the people who are listening, as you're building your MVP, you should be doing the strategy that I just outlined, so that you can meet your potential technical co-founders, so that by the time you're ready to bring them on, you already have a relationship built with them. You already have something that you can go on, rather than, I'm going at this cold. Now, whether or not you should rebuild yourself or hire someone to build a custom solution, I would still say, the way that I teach things to my founders is, even if you have a technical person, you don't necessarily have to build everything custom. Even if you have a technical person, this is one of the biggest mistakes a lot of technical people make, because they want to build everything custom. And that's very expensive. It takes a lot of time to manage. It takes a lot of time to make changes. So even if you have a technical person, you should be getting them engaged into thinking, what's the best, fastest way to prove this idea, right? Hypothesis-driven development, and not necessarily the shiny new thing that we can build. So evaluate technology from that perspective. And Bubble, if you already have experience with Glide, I think if you've never done no code before, learning another no code tool is going to be it's going to take time. And I've heard 2 or 3 months usually. I don't know how long it took you to learn Glide, but it does take time to actually learn how to use these tools. If you already spent the time and learned one no code platform, learning another no code platform is not going to be very hard for you, because you already have the concepts, you already know how to think, you already know how to think kind of like a developer, right? Which is, you've already been trained to think like that. So if you decide to go that route, I don't think it's going to be very hard for you to be able to do that. It depends on your level of traction. If you have to continue still do a lot of iterations and make a lot of changes really quickly, which a lot of people do, it might be a good way. If of course Bubble satisfies all of your requirements, it might be a good way to continue to iterate on your product until you're ready to build your full version. So, it can go so many different ways, but I would encourage you to keep experimenting, keep iterating until, and then pick the tools and the technologies for the specific point in time that you need to. And it's not always custom code. Even if you, again, I'm going to underline this, even if you get a technical person, and for anyone who's listening to this, encourage your technical people not to build more than you need to. That's the number one mistake that I see a lot of technical people make, because they think they're not trained to think like this, right? And that's why I teach this way of thinking to non-technical founders, so that they can take ownership of that and implement those kinds of processes and standards and set those expectations that this is how we make decisions. It's not just to build technology for technology's sake, but we build solutions to solve people's problems. And hopefully that helps
So,
you.
Nelly,
Yes.
what is that? So I actually did that as a non-tech founder. So I've had a few actual developers and tech people look at what I've created, and one of the problems is that they don't know how to recreate it, which was actually very strange to me, because I'm like, okay, you're a tech person, you should be able to recreate what this non-tech person did on a no-code application builder. So that was like one of the other problems that I didn't know if like I just completely happened to be some, I don't know, Isaac Newton of no-code apps where it just doesn't make sense. I don't believe that I'm that exceptional by any means.
Well, so you might.
I'm on my second TV show, and the 203 users that are on the platform. There's actually more than that, but there's 203 paying customers that pay on a $15 a month monthly, $15 a month subscription.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you know, I had the traction building, and like I said, I just released the application February 22nd. I started building it in December.
So Darian, to answer your question about developers, right? Like, not all developers, all technical people are not the same. So if a person that you're talking to has only built WordPress websites, for example, they don't understand how to make things happen in mobile development. So there's so many different skill sets and so many different levels of the different types of developers that are out there. Talking to the right ones is really key. So whoever you talk to and you show them the solution, if they said, I can't build that, they're not the right person. So anytime you are doing an interview, there are two things you should be looking for. The first one is what we already discussed: DNA qualities, alignments, vision, all of that stuff. The second one is the skill set. You want to be able to know that they're the right type of developer, that they have done something like this before, and then they can do this. And how do you vet? So that one of the other questions you asked is, how do I, as a non-technical person, vet that this person actually knows what they're doing? And the way you do that is by working with either a fractional CTO, which is a type of work that I do. And the fractional means part-time CTO. This is like a fancy word for part-time CTO. And the whole idea is that most early stage startups don't need a full-time CTO, but they need the strategic help of these types of high-level strategic advisors on their team, so that they can reach out to on a regular basis and ask questions. And in this case, maybe vet developers on your behalf. If you have technical advisors on your team, that's a work that you could ask them to do. But someone technical who understands the specific technology that you are picking needs to be able to vet the technical person. Okay, so you just, like, there's no way as a non-technical person you can vet the skill set of a technical person without actually being knowledgeable in that technology.
Well, Nelly, I would love to like book a call with you, because the problem that I'm running into is the application that I've created. I know that this is rare, and I know that everybody's going to beat me up for it, but it really and truly has not been done before. It takes elements from multiple applications to make it. So it's more so trying to find a multifaceted developer than just like one area, because it has to deal with, you know, it's life insurance for your mind. Mm-hmm. So like you're storing wisdom and guidance in a database instead of finances and possessions in a trust. So it just an application that hasn't been done before. So I've been finding people that are good at one part but have no clue how to do the other part, and so on and so forth. So maybe I'll need a team to, I don't know.
You might need a team. Yeah, but definitely reach out to me and I'll take a look and see if I can help further. All right. Great. So we have one more question. We are running a little bit late. Thank you guys for sticking around here. We've been here for over an hour. I love this conversation and all the amazing questions. If you are interested in learning more, diving deeper into this process that I'm talking about of and help your team increase the velocity with which you develop your products and iterating in your startup, right? This is not increasing product velocity doesn't mean just your product. It actually your entire team that is marketing it, that's selling it, that all of you need to be aligned on how to build this product and iterate on it from all different sides. So it's a startup. It's the way your startup needs to function to be able to do that. Jump on some of the free webinars that I have at pinned the link above. And also, I'm doing a live webinar on how to reach product market fit really quickly on Tuesday. Again, check this out on my website. That one is a really great one to attend if you are interested in the specific product market fit metrics that you should be looking at to be able to get to product market fit faster. So you know that you're on the way there, because if you're not there, those again will inform you on how you need to improve your product, your service, your sales, your marketing, anything else, right? To be able to up your numbers so that you can get there faster. So for the last question, we will go to Vasta. Vasta, welcome to the stage.
Hey, thank you so much. Am I audible?
Hi, yes, Vasta, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. So I am a non-technical founder, and I have a question that's probably not directly related to what you guys have been discussing so far. So I have built a product that is that is totally based on the growth is based on having a community around this product, and basically the more people use the product, the more value each individual gets out of the product, right? So you see, it's like something like how Instagram or Facebook is.
Yeah,
right?
we call we
So,
actually there's actually
right
there's
now-
a, so sorry Vasta to interrupt you. There's actually a technical term for it. It's called positive K factor. That we'll talk about that in the product market fit session, but that's what you need that in the network effects in your product. Go ahead.
Right. So basically, I have two questions. The first question is around the marketing side of things. Right now, I have a product at hand, and like how I'm going about this is, talking to the friends and family that I know and trying to push the product through them, right? And I wanna adopt some more strategy in order to, kind of grow this product. And where some of the people have suggested, forums like Quora or like, Discord and, Clubhouse of sorts, and similar platforms like that, where some community is already existing around the pain points that my product is trying to solve, right? And I think that's a great idea, but what I do not have is a framework or a structure on like, how do I really go about pushing this product in these forums, right? And that's one thing, right? Pushing it through these forums. Are there any other, strategies that I can adopt, especially since my product is community based? That will enable faster and rapid community development in the early stages of the product. That's my first question. And the second question that I have is: are there any books or any kind of resources that I can refer to see how other startups like maybe like TikTok or all of these other community-based products have built, and like some of the strategies that they have adopted, tried and tested, and that has worked for them? Any books or any kind of resources that gives me that information?
Great question, Vatsa. So the way that I'm going to answer it is probably not the way you expect, because most of the time when you have found, so marketing or not being able to get customers is a messaging problem. Oftentimes, it's not necessarily pushing it down people's throat and, convincing them to use your application. If you're doing that, you haven't found the painkiller idea that, you're solving a level 5 or 6 problem. But when you found a level 12 out of 10 problem and you're able to communicate and connect with the people who need that problem solved, then you don't need to sell the product to them. And the way you fix messaging is going back to the very first step that we talked about in tech speak, called validation. In validation, you really need to understand the specific pain points that people have. And when you're talking to customers one-on-one, you will understand their fears, their objections, their what keeps them up at night, why they resonate with something like this. And then you can use that specific information that you gather in your copy, in your marketing, in your specific channels that you need to pick, right, to disseminate the message. That's how you can decide, is video the better medium? Is audio the better medium? Do I need to write articles? What communities should I be focusing on? And all of that is going to inform you and help you create a marketing plan. Okay, a marketing plan. Now, all of this is not going to work if you've ultimately built a product that doesn't resonate with users. But if you build a product that resonates with users, then all of the work that you've done, hopefully before you build a product, right? In my 10-step process, I teach that so that before you build a product, you already have done all of this work. You know exactly the pain points. You already know that your problem solves a level 12 out of 10 problem, and the specific pain points and users and how they talk about this problem, so that by the time you launch, you already have your marketing plan. You already know the specific where your users hang out, which communities, and how specifically to talk to them. Because if they're millennials, the language that you're going to be using, or Gen Zs, the language that you're going to be using is going to be very different than if they are, an older generation. So, all of this is really, really important to do. You need to have a marketing plan and understand how to communicate. What is the messaging that you need that resonates with your users? And then you take those, you create whatever, then you test out all the different channels and see which one is going to be the best source of customers for you, whether it's TikTok or Twitter, or you build your own mailing list, or you whatever else, right? There's so many different things that you need to try. It could be paid ads, it could be webinars, it could be so many things. And your job as the startup is to iterate through all of these really, really quickly, test as many things as you can, and figure out what's the best way to bringing customers into your platform. And by the way, if you're charging for your product, certain sources or certain types of mediums might be better for you from a revenue perspective than others. And so you need to evaluate that, and you need to have that as a metric, so that by the time you are you can actually know that this specific channel maybe brings fewer customers, but these customers that I get from this channel buy my product, they pay money or whatever else, right? So I should double down on that rather than spending time everywhere else. Because as a startup, you have a finite amount of resources. You don't have necessarily resources where you can spread yourself thin on 1,000 different marketing platforms to be able to disseminate your message. And the other things that I think you can try, and I'm thinking of doing a session specifically for that, is Web3, right? And this whole concept of DAOs and tokenizations, and how you can, the things that I think a lot of Web3 companies have is incentivizing users from the very beginning. Like, for example, if you think about any coin, or let's say talk about Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin became giant despite the fact that they never spent any time and money on marketing, because they were able to get the initial users on board. They showed them the value, and now these these users want to grow the community because they are financially incentivized to do so. So those are all new marketing tactics that you can use. But again, none of this is going to work if you haven't built a product that resonates with your customers and you know that it's a level 12 out of 10 problem for them. And then having a very clear marketing strategy that with this very clear messaging that resonates with people, that's how you can build a community around what it is that you're doing, standing up for something, taking a stance for X or Y or Z, and be very clear in your messaging around that. Hopefully that helps you, Vatsa. I mentioned a lot of things, but let me know if you have any follow-up questions.
No, I get it.
Great. Excellent.
So I think like the gist of it is, kind of hit a trial and see what works and see which forum and like which kind of messaging works best for the user base that I am trying to target. So yeah, I am already in works. I'm already doing that. So I'll try and kind of diversify more and like I just really I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah. And so like for example, I've been doing TechSpeak, which is my paid program since 2012. It started as an in-person boot camp and went online in 2020. But I'm refining my messaging every single day based on the entrepreneurs that I speak to, based on how I see people resonating with certain messaging. So getting your messaging is not like, oh, I got my messaging right. It's something that you're constantly evolving and testing as well, because there are certain words, certain tweaks, certain things that you can make to your copy or the way you phrase things or the way you present things that will help you connect a lot faster, communicate the value of your product a lot faster than you've done before. So I think that this is something that is a chronic problem with a lot of early stage founders. Once they got something going, they think they got it and that's it. But it's everything in your startup needs to be a constant iteration. You constant testing and improving, because every improvement in your messaging, in your process, in your delivery, in your iteration is going to make a huge difference to the bottom line and how quickly you're ultimately going to reach product market fit. So with that, we are going to close the session for today. I am going to try to do this every week. My intention is always to do that, but next week I'm going to be at a conference, so I am definitely not going to be holding a session next week, probably the following week. If you are interested in these types of sessions and want to get notified, either follow me on Clubhouse and click that notification bell, or you can get on my newsletter. Every time I go live, I send an email to everyone to come and join us in the time when we're going to do it. So connect with me, check out the free webinars that I have. Join me on Tuesday for how to reach product market fit really quickly. It's a live webinar. We'll talk about a lot of the metrics that we mentioned today as well. So I look forward to working with you, serving you, and helping you get to product market fit a lot faster. And hopefully this was very helpful. Thank you again for everyone who came up on stage and asked amazing questions. And of course, help everyone else learn as well. Have a great afternoon and evening if you're on the other side, in the other part of the world. And I will talk to you guys soon. Talk to you soon.